Um, I'm truly honored to be asked to invite here and humbled to follow Dr. Didada. Um, um, well, to all of you Aggies, I say welcome to the SAC. um, okay, I was asked to talk about what makes a great international program. Uh, and I sort of subtitled it, How Universities Can Impact Agricultural Development. Let's see. Um, I see two types of activities which have been discussed today, both educational and development activities. I'm going to focus on the development side, partly because I don't have much experience in the other, and development is my passion. And we have I consider technical support, capacity building, and then in-country research as the types of activities. Just to give you an outline, as an introduction, I'm going to talk a little bit about the trends, at least at my university, some of my experience in Haiti, constraints to doing research abroad, and then I'll talk in depth about my Haiti experience and what worked, what didn't work. And I'll also discuss, I guess from my perspective at Auburn, what the strengths and weaknesses of universities in agricultural development, and how do we leverage our strengths. Well, I was hired in 1990 by Auburn University to work in an agroforestry project. I had been at the International Institute of Tropical Agriculture with Dr. B.B. Singh. I spent 2 years working in Nigeria and 5 in Congo before coming to Auburn. At the time, I was very pleased because the university seemed really engaged in international development. We had an international programs office that directly managed projects in overseas, including Mali and Haiti. We had an associate dean for international agriculture who was very much engaged in looking for funding, seeking projects, international cooperation. And Auburn played a leadership role in the Southeast Consortium for International Development, one of the consortia that joined universities to go after other jointly for projects. And CSID was really great, particularly we had a lot of 1890 land grants as well as 1862 land grants, and it enabled smaller universities to be able to combine to do things. Today, our International Programs Office is limited primarily to international students, processing international students, and study abroad, sending faculty abroad. In the College of Agriculture, the associate dean was replaced by a half-time faculty coordinator for international agriculture. CSID no longer exists, nor do any of the other consortia that were operating previously. And there's a greater emphasis on study tours and less on international development. My experience in Haiti, I initially was asked to carry out agroforestry research, mainly related to alley cropping and conservation hedgerows. And that got interrupted by a coup d'etat against Aristide, and I moved to campus. And later the project was restarted and it was changed, but I was made campus coordinator. So I was going back and forth to Haiti and coordinating things. I also had a CRISP, soil management CRISP project, incidentally with Texas A&M, on management of densely populated tropical steeplands. So I coordinated the Haiti part of the project. And we also had a World Bank project where we provided technical assistance working with farmers in the buffer zones, designing research for buffer zones of the national parks and forests. just briefly, I don't have time to go into details, but we had long-term agroforestry research focused. We worked out how you manage alley cropping on hillsides, looked at what hedgerow species would be best in different environments, different elevations and soils, looked at the alley cropping from the standpoint of soil conservation compared to rock walls. Thanks to the soil management CRISP, we graduated 2 PhDs in agronomy and soils and a PhD, master's and PhD in agricultural economics, all integrated into the issue of soil conservation and agroforestry. We also had a big program in tree genetic improvement where we identified, selected improved genotypes of over 20 species, developed seed banks for distribution to farmers. And unfortunately, by the time we had them, the USAID was no longer interested in tree planting. So, but we also did research for the project, looking at crop varieties, looking at crop practices. This was an interesting case where a high-value crop, Dioscorea cayennensis, or yellow yam, was grown in a forest canopy, and we developed management practices to reduce incidence of black rot disease. We did also marketing and socioeconomic research. One that's particularly interesting, we made some innovations that improved the mango export industry, cocoa, but also internally there's a cassava bread called cassave in Haiti, where the farmers grow the cassava. The fresh roots were transported to the city to market. Well, we involved a food scientist at Tuskegee, and we were able to figure a way to extract the water from the cassava in the village, so divide the process up, and so they didn't have to transport the roots. It increased incomes of farmers, and it saved money for the people in the city that were processing the cassava. We involved lots of faculty, even had a couple Aggies there, Dr. Larry Wilding in the center photo with Dr. Keith Castle from North Carolina State University, both as consultants to advise USAID on a particular issue or to actually be engaged in research. I want to talk briefly about what are some of the constraints to carrying out research in developing countries. One is quality control. How do you ensure you get adequate supervision from a distance? How do you protect the trials, get good data? How do you handle logistics, processing the samples once they're collected? There's more from the management's point of view. How do you manage the funds? Who does it? How do you maintain funding in an environment where there's changing priorities? We found that the funding agency kept changing what the objectives of the project were, and political instability. And how do you maintain control of the integrity of the research? Often the project officers don't understand what are the requirements to get good data. Okay, so going on to what worked, what conditions allowed for success. One is having good quality research support in country. I went out to get the best qualified technician I could find. Somebody had a master's degree. And also, if you have a CRISP program, having the possibility that person might be able to take that data and go get a graduate degree is a big incentive for him or her to do a good job on the work they're doing. It takes a lot of time, and had I not been in country when I started my research, it would have been very difficult to select the right sites, laying out the studies. You have to ensure field visits. Security for trials is a big thing, particularly if you're not on an experiment station. One of the first things I did, and it raised a lot of eyebrows when I did it, when I started an experiment, first thing I did is fence the area and hire watchmen to keep the goats and cattle out of the fields. So what helped us to be successful was good in-country support. We had an administrator hired by CSID in Haiti, who worked directly for us, paid the salaries, handled logistics. And I also had to fight to maintain our program in light of the many changes to programs. And I say, well, if you cut this, all this investment is lost. So, and when I went to campus as campus coordinator, my field experience enabled me to respond to USAID concerns, because I knew the country, I knew what would work. I was able to suggest and develop scopes of work and involve faculty from Auburn and other CSID institutions in the work we did. And then I could provide technical backup to the field staff. So campus-based technical coordination is very important. Also, project administration was very important to me. The project was managed administratively by CSID and not by Auburn University, and that's an important point because it helped us avoid the pitfalls of Auburn rules and regulations as a state institution. It allowed myself and other faculty to focus on the technical issues and not, hiring and firing and all the other things, handling the money. So both the U.S. and country-based administrative support were very important to be successful. And the administrative and logistical support in Haiti enabled us to piggyback other projects. The soil management, Chris Steeplin's project, I would not have been able to do it without that support because the Haitian government wasn't capable of. And I was able to we were also able to piggyback the World Bank project on that project because we had an administration infrastructure in Haiti. Things that did not work so well. One is that in the project, the way USAID set up the project, CSID, Auburn University did the research. Somebody else did the extension. And so we were institutionally removed from the farmer to a large extent. So that was a problem in having an input to what's transferred to farmers and getting feedback. Decisions taken by the project officers negatively impacted research. We lost trials sometimes because the project officer wouldn't allow us the resources. For example, on-farm trials, they said the extension workers, CARES extension workers would handle our on-farm trials. Well, guess what? When harvest time came, the extension workers' job was to go out and measure yields in farmers' fields. It wasn't to harvest our trials. So that's the kind of thing that did not work very well. Project redirections result in starts and stops, and sometimes it comes at the wrong time, like at planting time, they say, well, stop what you're doing, we're going to rethink, and then more seriously, when they totally change focus, much of the research doesn't get applied, doesn't reach the farmer. Okay, finally, I want to go on to what I think are some of the strengths and weaknesses of the land-grant universities. Of course, I don't need to talk about the research and, faculty qualifications, but one of the things I want to point out is the long-term relationships that we have with former students gives us access to country expertise. This is something that the Beltway Bandits don't have, you know, but we have. Something that helped me personally to get promotion was the greater willingness on the part of the tenure and promotion committee of outreach as a type of scholarship, and therefore I was able to use much of what I did internationally. I was able to package it as outreach, and therefore gave me a better chance of getting promoted. I'd say one of the weaknesses we have, and I think that you've dealt with it here at Texas A&M, but the sponsors of agricultural development expect timely interventions, engagement for the life of the project, whereas our teaching faculty have very limited time. In my department at Auburn, we've lost 5 faculty in the last few years. We've lost those positions. And what it means is that the rest of us have to pick up the teaching, advising, all these responsibilities. We have, with all the conflicting obligations, you know, their scheduling, the faculty can't have the level of engagement that the donors would want. And also, I've also alluded to the bureaucracy. Sometimes rules and regulations get in the way of what our donors expect us to provide. For example, when we brought in graduate students on the soil management CRISP, we had to provide them with English language training first. We don't do that. Our state doesn't allow that. We're supposed to provide them with health insurance. Well, that's the responsibility of the student. So getting the university to accept all that, I think that has been a problem to get around. Also, I think, at least at Auburn, we sometimes have the wrong model for how to get international contracts, because our university looks at the faculty as the ones who get the contracts and grants. Whereas the funding agency looks at they're looking for relationships with an institution, not a faculty member. So we need administrators that are willing to hustle and go out and look for the projects and then bring in the faculty to work with them on it. And I think for the big USAID projects, the faculty themselves don't have the time to do this. You need people to, you know, coordinate that type of work. So in conclusion, how will we leverage our strength? I think we need institutional leadership, and I think you're doing that here. Appoint technical people to provide leadership and coordination. You need in-country support with administration and logistics, so that when the faculty member goes abroad, he's got what he needs so he can focus on his work and not on other things. And then we need ways to circumvent administrative regulations. I'm sorry, you probably can't see the bottom there, but one way would be foundation. And also, I think, having a consortium. I would really like to see a consortium set up again so that universities can go after projects jointly. And then, you know, we also dependent on the federal government, and we need them to understand that applied research is important in agricultural development. I believe the land-grant universities should be involved not only in going after funding, but we should be involved in planning international and implementing agricultural development projects. And then we also need stable long-term commitments from the donors, not something that keeps changing every 2-3 years. So with that, thank you very much.